If you're an adult who is working on learning the clarinet, then this video is for you because there's a few things that you need to know about how your brain works that's going to really help how you learn the instrument. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at quickstartclarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. In order to understand the common mistakes that I see my adult students making, I want to start with a brief and very basic explanation of sort of how our brains develop. Again, I am not a scientist or neuroscientist by any means. I've just sort of read some books and taken a psychology class. So my understanding is very limited and very basic, but I think I can sort of explain how this works, and I think it's relatively accurate and will be helpful for sort of understanding this. So when we're children, very young children, our brains are like literally sponges. That's a very common saying. And our brains are just absorbing things and growing like extremely fast. We're adding tons and tons and tons and tons of new sort of neural networks and connections and things in our brain from about the age of 0 to around 8 years old. There's really interesting studies about learning a language that if you start learning a language before the age of 8, it's much easier and more likely for you to become fluent in it than if you start after the age of 8. And with music being so similar to a language, I find that to very much be the case. I'm a pretty firm believer that there's no such thing as talent and that anybody can get as good as they want at music if they work at it a lot and work at it in the right way. But if there was anything that was like talent that I see in my students, it's the students who started doing music, whether it's piano lessons or singing in a choir or whatever it may be, kind of before the age of 8. Those students who start before 8 or right around 8 tend to pick up things a little bit faster than the students who didn't. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're always the better students. It just means that they pick up things a little bit faster. And that's, again, the closest thing to talent that I've ever experienced. Again, if you didn't start before 8, that doesn't mean you're a lost cause, and you can absolutely learn these things as well. But around age 8, our brain starts to become more efficient. So instead of just being really a ton of neurons and a ton of neural networks kind of bouncing around doing everything, it starts to sort of consolidate things and starts to reallocate portions of the brain to more specific things and more dedicated things to what we're actually doing and what we're actually using it for. So it's becoming more efficient. And that happens to around the age of 25 when the brain is sort of fully developed. All of the parts are in there and things are pretty much set. And what this leads to is adults having a lot less neuroplasticity. It's a lot harder for an adult brain to learn a new thing or do a new thing or change a habit or change a routine. It's not impossible at all. It's still absolutely possible to learn new things and change routines and things like that. But the adult brain's purpose is to be efficient at what it does so that it can very quickly identify the things that it needs to identify, and it sort of just does what it's doing almost on autopilot much more than a child's brain, which is great for most of the things that we need to do. Now, when it comes to learning a new skill or growing and getting better at the clarinet, that maybe is a little bit of a hindrance because our brain knows how we're used to playing the clarinet and is going to kind of just continue doing that on autopilot as an adult brain. That's why so many people can play in a community band for years and years and years and years and not really make much improvement. And it's a little bit the brain's fault, but it's also a little bit of our habits' fault as well because we aren't seeking out new information and trying to learn new things and trying to develop new skills and grow as a player. Now, maybe that growth mindset and wanting to continuously get better is part of your habit and is sort of fixed in there and is efficient. Then that's great. You're probably growing and improving. But I'll leave that tangent aside and talk about the big mistakes that come from this sort of fixed brain and very efficient brain when it comes to the adult development of the brain. And these are things that I've seen from teaching lots of adults and teaching lots of children, and sort of the differences in the way that they learn and the way that they grow on their clarinet journeys. So when it comes to adults thinking about that sort of more fixed mind, adults have two main things that I think sort of get in their way of growing and improving. Number one is adults think that there is a correct way to play the instrument. And yes, there is a good way and there are better ways and worse ways, but there is no sort of one size fits all, this is exactly how you should be doing it. But if you think about that adult brain, it's all about efficiency and effectiveness. And a lot of times adults too are thinking, I don't know how many years I have left to learn this thing, so I want to learn it the best way, the most efficiently, and the most effectively. The problem with that is it leads to this too much of a searching for the perfect thing. They think, oh, the perfect equipment or mouthpiece or reed is going to make a big difference. Oh, the perfect embouchure, I need to know what my embouchure should be, and I need to get my embouchure to do that every single time. There's a perfect voicing, and I need to find that exact voicing and have my tongue in XYZ position exactly that way all the time. My air has to do exactly this. And yes, there is a sweet spot for all of those things and sort of a nice balance to the equipment and your support and all that stuff that's going to make it work the best. But it's not going to be anything that any teacher explicitly tells you. It's going to be something that you have to sort of experiment and search and find for yourself. So if you're always thinking, well, I heard high tongue position is good, so I'm always going to put my tongue as high as I can possibly conceive and think about, and just that's where my tongue is supposed to be, then you're not going to find the best sound, because the high tongue position, yes, the tongue should be high, but how high is a high tongue is so subjective and dependent on everybody's individual anatomy as well. So have a high tongue position is great, but if you're searching for like the highest tongue position, and I heard it should be a high tongue position, so I have to always play with exactly this tongue position, it's probably not going to yield the best results. So that's mistake number one, is being sort of too fixed on finding the right way to do things and not flexible enough to explore and experiment. Mistake number two is adults thinking that they know how things work. And again, this is the efficient and the sort of fixed brain, because it does know how tons and tons and tons of things work. And adults are experts in lots of different fields. And some adults are experts in playing the clarinet. And some adults think they're experts in playing the clarinet. And what I mean by this is this idea that when a teacher tells an adult student something, oftentimes I get the sense that the adult student thinks like, oh yeah, I know that. That's something that I've heard before and learned before. And the adult student assumes that they're doing it just because they know it. And that's the key is, yes, you've heard something before. Yes, you know that's how it should work. But are you actually doing it? And again, with the high tongue position example, it's not like a teacher says, you should have a high tongue position, so you should go for the maximum highest tongue position you can. But you should take a second to experiment and explore and think about the tongue position and kind of feel what it's doing. The adult mind is super good at jumping to conclusions because, again, it is so efficient. So when you hear a piece of advice, the adult mind instantly jumps to the conclusion of, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. I must be doing that. That's how it works. Great, done. Instead, the child's mind hears something and they're like, a high tongue position, how does that even work? Like, let me experiment and explore and find what that means. I've never even thought about my tongue before. My brain doesn't even know where my tongue is, and it has to kind of find it. Whereas the adults just assume that it's done. So those are the two mistakes: being too fixed on finding the right way and sort of forcing yourself into the right way of doing things, and being too fixed and jumping to the conclusion, assuming that you're doing the things that you know you're supposed to be doing. The solution to both of those is to explore and experiment more. So I encourage you in your practice, if you're watching this as an adult student, to try some new things, to experiment a little bit, to explore the things that you know are right, but where exactly is right. We're not supposed to bite, so how little pressure actually are we supposed to put on the reed? Should there be any pressure on the reed? Maybe there actually needs to be a little bit of pressure on the reed. So starting to think through those things and explore and experiment. And if you're still watching this video and want some new interesting things to explore and experiment with, then I encourage you to check out my free members area at quickstartclarinet.com/getstarted. That has sort of my best getting started resources, free downloads, handouts, videos, all kinds of fun stuff to help you to build a good foundation. And I guarantee there's something in there that's a little bit new or something that you can experiment and explore and look into a little bit more deeply to help your clarinet and music journey. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if you have any comments or questions about this. And thank you for watching this video. And I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the Quick Start Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.